Hey, all my IFG friends, this is Steve. I want to say, if you like movies like I do, we've started a new podcast called Happy Hour Flicks. You can find it anywhere podcasts are found. It's all about nostalgic movies that we love, and we bring on special guests each episode, and we also have specialty cocktails made for each one, too. So it really is an hour of a good time talking about movies that we love, like Gremlins, Seven, Free Willy. We talk about The Last Starfighter also. I mean, we kind of run the gamut across all the decades and really have a great time. So wanted to invite you to come over and join us. That's Happy Hour Flicks, anywhere podcasts are found.
This is the
Independent
Filmmaker's Guide
from Framework Productions.
Framework
Productions.
Welcome back to the Independent Filmmaker's Guide. I'm your host, Stephen Pierce. I spent most of my career under the gun finishing an edit for a TV show, music video, or web series, quickly slamming together a color correction for the piece myself as we rushed to make it to air. So it blew my mind when I started editing for SNL, which is the craziest schedule in television, and they were working with professional colorists and color houses. And that's how I met Josh Bohoskey, a dope colorist that works for the Mill here in New York City. In addition to still coloring multiple pieces a week for SNL, he works on everything from commercials to feature films to music videos, including winning the AICE Colorist of the Year award for his music video work in 2017. Which, Josh, that little music video you beat out someone no one's ever heard of called Beyonce, right?
Yeah, it was up against Beyonce Lemonade and a Sia music video.
What was that?
And it was this little $5,000 budget music video.
Yeah.
Somehow, I don't know.
I was shocked. It just
but...
goes to show that, dollars and cents don't always equal success.
Yeah, it boils down to creativity.
For people that have maybe never worked with a colorist before, what is a colorist and how do you equate them in the workflow? How would you describe them for somebody that's never worked with a colorist?
Picture a colorist is kind of like how, you have your director and cinematographer, and then when it gets into the post world, the editor kind of becomes the director informing the piece, and then the colorist kind of takes the reins of the cinematographer on putting the finishing touches on for them. So
right.
Yeah, so it's like just kind of taking the footage that they captured and escalating it to the next level.
So how did you get to be a colorist? Did you always want to do this?
No, it was pretty random. I was had an internship at this small edit house in Soho that had 3 editors and 2 producers, and did that for 6 months. And then they basically hooked me up with an internship at the Mill, just to be a runner, serving coffee and all that. And I started at the Mill thinking I wanted to be an editor, but this was before the Mill offered editing. So I kind of just scrambled looking around, seeing what the different departments did, and saw that on the top floor, the cool suites were the color suites, which I didn't even know was a profession until I saw that. And I started kind of poking my head in and seeing that the assist would be scanning film all day, because this was back in the day when everything was shot on film. And I had been a projectionist at the Angelica Film Center, so I knew how to work with film. So I weirdly got into the department that way, and then started learning what it was. It made sense once I realized, I was like, this is why everything I shoot looks like crap. And this is why professional things are always balanced and everything matches. And I always just thought they got really lucky with lighting, but
there's a lot of work that goes into it in post. One thing that specifically I remember, we were doing a piece, you colored the music thing for us called The Sound concert film a little while back. And in the edit, we were not using, we had a 4 red DSMC2 cameras. So we were shooting 6K on 4 red cameras with legit cinema lenses, and it looked awesome. And then we had one little A7S on just an old EF lens on a slider, and we weren't using it in the edit. And then we got to color with you, and because we were worried about how it was going to look, that it wouldn't match. And I remember just immediately, in 2 seconds, you're like, oh yeah, bam, bam, bam. You smash a bunch of buttons on your big base light there, and then all of a sudden you can't tell the difference. And James turned to me and he's like, we should have used that angle a couple of more times.
I know, it's pretty crazy. It's there's some amazing things you can do in color. I always say you can either really escalate the visuals to the next level, or you can completely screw up what everyone was shooting. So you have that kind of capability on it.
So tell me a little bit about your workflow. How does it normally go for you? So like you get a client that's coming in tomorrow to do a music video with you.
Yeah.
How
You
do
mean
you,
now in COVID or before all this?
let's do it before and then COVID. Let's compare and contrast. Why not?
So before COVID, it would be, if we have a job book, say like a music video, commercial, whatever, we'll get the prep usually the night before. And the prep is basically a hard drive with all the raw footage and then an XML, AAF, or EDL that helps us conform up that footage. So we'll pull in just the shots that are being used. And we'll have an assist who does that and gets the scenes ready and preps it all. So in the morning when the colorist comes in, it's good to go.
Do you usually get references?
Yes. Yeah. It depends. If sometimes you don't, when it was in session and like the clients are there, but definitely now with everything being through Zoom and things like that, it's always like getting color notes and color references, just as much information up front as possible, just so you have a good idea of what they're wanting. If I get your footage in and then maybe what I want to do is completely different from what you envisioned, it's such a subjective art that it's like as much communication as possible makes the process a lot easier.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, when you're working at the mill, your guys' facility is amazing. Like you have the big color theater, which is just like a real awesome experience to color in. It's like soft light and beautiful. And you have these massive machines, like these base lights that are, I mean, they look like wings to airplanes that have 1,000 buttons on them that all play videos. So, but now you're working from home. How did you transition into that?
It was pretty, I mean, it was definitely a rocky first couple of weeks. So yeah, we worked on Baselight at the mill, which is before COVID is a Linux-based system. So it's not something you can it's not like Resolve where you can download it and set it up on your computer at home and things. So Filmlight, which is the company that makes Baselight, was thankfully, they released a Mac version for COVID. So everyone was able to download it. I think they purposefully didn't want to release it because they wanted to kind of maintain, not have it be so accessible to everyone. But now they kind of opened Pandora's box because honestly, it works fantastic.
You know, often. I know a lot of people that use Resolve, that use, things on their laptop at home. And this is stuff that you and I've talked about, like just over drinks before, about whether that is possible to do the same quality of work, because the real beauty of the Baselight and the way that you work is the specificity that you can get within it. Like really keying, you key extremely quickly and you do it kind of progressively so that things match, right? Like
and I mean, honestly, I think you can do all that with Resolve too. And I have to say, like working on the Mac at home, I'm working at the same speed that I was in the office. I think a big perk of the office is just having a controlled setting you're in, which is a little hard to do from an apartment. And just having like the control, like having like the perfect lighting, room, a comfortable space for clients to come, because a lot of it too is it's 50% work and it's 50% client services. People, this is the finishing line of the project. People are generally in a good mood. This is the final little finishing touches and they want to be in a fun environment, again, free snacks and sodas while they're working on it and be pampered a little bit.
So what are you doing? How are you addressing the environment at your apartment? Did you set up kind of like a negative light space?
Yeah. So basically I took the room that has the least amount of light in it and then just kind of got a blackout windows to black it out. And then got a little just kind of LED panel thing to just have a little neutral white light in the room. And then I basically just converted my dining room table into my coloring bay, which my wife's not too happy about.
I mean, because whenever you're in a color theater, they are very dark. Like if people, they're dark. Usually there's soft, 6,000 Kelvin light, real soft kind of white light. Why is that?
Well, it's dark so you can see everything. It's like if you try to grade in a bright room like where I'm in now, it's impossible to see, especially if it's all shot very moody. It's it's impossible to see the differences of what you're doing, and you would have to rely totally on the scopes to make sure everything's kind of balanced and at the same levels. And then the reason you want just a little bit of white ambiance light is because your eyes are always playing tricks on you. So you just want to have a point of reference. Because if you're grading in a completely pitch black room and you're not looking at your scopes, your eyes will just adjust to what you're doing. So what you think is looking clean and crisp white could be completely green or magenta as time goes by. So it's always just like having all these little things to just help with your eyes that are playing tricks on you.
Do you feel like what you've been able to do at home here is a pretty decent reconstruction of what you guys had at the office?
I think so, yeah. And it's also kind of nice because having this, having Basslight on the Mac has been cool too, because I can easily switch from my calibrated monitor to just seeing it on the Mac. And it's cool to see the difference of that too, because everything's different from how to look on my TV to the Mac to my phone to the calibrated monitor. It's always different. So it's nice to have an array of judgment to see, so nothing looks too crazy, because the calibrated monitor is so good that it blends things really well that might start breaking apart when I see it on a Mac, like if it's a very intense grade. So it's nice to kind of cut between them and be able to see that. It's been like, when this all first started happening, I was fortunate enough to be like booked on a episodic series. So I did like the whole season of AP Bio, the season 3, from my dining room table. And I was scared shitless at first when I was like figuring it out, but it was smooth. I was like able to do an episode a day still, which is same that I was doing when I was in the office.
And you editing, what kind of machine are you editing on? Or sorry, you're coloring on?
It's a iMac Pro.
You got an iMac Pro with a smaller kind of control surface?
Yeah, so Basslight makes it's called a Slate, which is like their portable version of the Blackboard. So it's not the huge panel; it's like a condensed version of it. But it also it has pages too, so you can customize all the buttons still. So that's the main thing that takes just getting used to, because it's all, at the end of the day, it's all muscle memory, the way you have the buttons programmed. So moving to the Slate, it definitely took like just a few weeks to like remember again, like be like, okay, so now this is here, this is there.
And yeah, but you just get used to that after a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but there hasn't been any like hindering or anything that I could do on that machine that I can't do at home, which is nice.
So whenever you get a piece, like let's say it's going to be a film, you're going to color a feature film or a short film, and the DP or the director sends you some references. How do you go about, what is your process from analyzing that and comparing it to their footage and trying to build that look?
Yeah, I mean, it's you pulling in the images into the machine and just like cutting between what you're working on and the images, so you can just see it quickly back and forth. And then it's just kind of building it off of that. It's just like kind of intuitive. I don't know. It's like, especially after a while, like, different LUTs and things that can kind of manipulate and be like, oh, maybe if I blend a little of this in or that, it'll give kind of that flavor that I'm seeing. And just kind of, honestly, it's just practice. Yeah. And knowing what'll work and what won't, and what to do to kind of encapsulate whatever the look they're going for. Because that's the main job of a colorist, is being a chameleon and blending into whatever project you're working on. So you can do something really gritty, you can do something really poppy, it's just like, the best colorist is someone who can just blend into whatever project they're working on and enhance it, instead of just being like, oh, you're coming to Josh, you're getting the Josh look.
Yeah, totally. So how do you, whenever you get a reference, have you ever had like a situation where you get a bunch of references that are not very cohesive, or they give you references and then that's not what they want at all?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. Or they'll give references and then they'll be like, wait, you know what? This actually doesn't work for our footage, and it's that, I'll say, makes it harder from working from home, because when you're in a suite with someone, it's a lot easier to be like, quickly test images or different looks and be like, all right, so let's look this. All right, that doesn't work. Let's try this. Let's try that. And then if a client isn't available and you're kind of doing through postings, it just kind of slows the process down, because then it's like, you'll set the look, send it, and then they might not be able to look at it right away. And then they give notes and kind of thing. But we've been able, like, one of our engineers at the mill, since this like software, literally we got it the day all this was happening, he just created a software that basically to make it so you could view it in real time. So I would just send you a link and you can open it up and you can see my corrections in real time, which is pretty awesome, because there are things like Streambox and things like that, but this was just like a free thing that just like instant, no delay. The only thing is it's not moving picture. You see it on still frames, but it's super helpful for just setting looks and getting looks down. And then I can go through, do a pass, and then send you a posting to watch down and tweak.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. So did you design that software, or did you just find one that
Yeah, he
existed?
designed it. Yeah, and like put it into Baselight. It was pretty. He's a genius, this guy.
I was about to say that guy just totally
Yeah.
just like pulled that out of nowhere. That's amazing. So let's talk a little bit about Saturday Night Live and SNL and the stuff you've done on that, because that offers unique challenges in and of itself, right? Because of the very nature of the content.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean SNL is just like that's the perfect example of like the entire team becoming a chameleon to whatever you're parodying at the time and being like, okay, we're going after this like this music video, or we're going after this like this film or this newscasting. Like that's a yeah whole team effort of everyone doing like what lenses, what camera do we need to shoot this on to replicate this, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So I remember when I would be editing a piece, I usually get it. You know, my thing is I usually ended up doing the pieces that were one day. So I'd start like early in the morning on a Saturday with getting the footage, and then I'd come in and my assistant at some point in the early morning, like 10 or 11, would start pulling my sequences out in the background and sending them to you guys, and because you wanted to set the look with the DP.
Yep. Yeah. So it'd be like, I do two of the, I would do two of the digital shorts on Saturday, and then another colorist, Elias at the mill, he would do one as well. And basically it'd be, so when we go in first thing Saturday morning, we'd get like a work in progress CDL from you guys. So just kind of like whatever rough edit you did that night or were able to put together, you send that to us. And then I would be with the first DP from like 9 a.m. till noon or 1. And we'll just kind of go through, we'll set the look like in the morning. And then depending on where you're at, get like an updated edit and then kind of do it and put the grade on. And then we'll send a posting to you and the director so you guys can kind of see what we're doing and give notes and feedback. So it's a very different process from a normal job, but but it works. It's just keeping that open line of dialogue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
That was what always blew my mind, that color, because color would come in usually, you know, at the end of the night. So, you know, we have dress we wouldn't usually even have color for dress rehearsal at 8. So the color would come in somewhere around 9 or 10, sometimes even 10:30, depending on, you know, what it was. And then it's a big race to get it into the sequence and get the color back into the edit. Yeah. But sometimes those edits change. Like after dress, they'll come back and they'll change pretty dramatically across like an hour and a half, and then we have to send it back to you guys to color it. Do you ever remember any of those sequence or circumstances where stuff would come in and you'd be under the gun to try and make a correction and get it back?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, now too, especially for like my assistant too, because Elias and I will leave after we send the dress edit in. So it's then it becomes one person, our assistant, handling 3 shorts themselves, handling pickups coming through. So definitely I give credit to them, because if the edit changes drastically and we're gone, it's like not only are they having to grade new shots and match it, but they're having to do it for 3 different projects all at once and sending it back ASAP because these things are starting to air. I think the craziest one that I personally worked on was the Dave Chappelle Walking Dead skit, where I think it was insanely VFX heavy, like just everything. And this was before we had a Sparrow to send stuff back and forth. So it was still a drive and a cab back and forth. And I think it was like 10. I think I got the EDL from you guys at like 9 o'clock or something, and then had to bust it out, render it out, and then like at 10 we had to put someone in a cab to get it to you guys by like 10:30, which gave you 30 minutes to conform it before. It was like that one.
Yeah, I was on the visual effects team for that one. I did some of the VFX shots in that piece.
Yeah.
And that's a real special workflow we should talk about in a second also, because there's always a big conversation about how to handle VFX with color.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember a lot of those. Footage would come in and it would literally be a scramble about who was available. Sometimes we'd have 3 or 4 people, you know, usually 2 people is the most efficient. We'd have somebody starting at the top of a sequence and somebody starting at the back of the sequence, cutting in these shots. Because the way it comes back is you guys render everything with handles. So, you know, if the shot starts at, you know, 1 minute and then ends at 1 minute, you know, 10 seconds, you give us the 2 seconds before 1 minute, so 58 seconds, and then 2 seconds after. So back then we'd manually have to go in and cut those in, manually, shot by shot, re-edit, reposition.
Yeah.
And if there were any effects or motion or whatever. And if you're doing that, and meanwhile in the background, the post supervisor, the assistant director's calling up on the phone from downstairs being like, where is this? Like, it airs in 5 minutes. Like, where is it? That it gets pretty stressful.
Yeah.
So that's what I always thought was amazing about SNL using color. I mean, you also have like this unique... Well, let's actually talk about VFX for a second, because how do you propose VFX be done? Because it kind of depends upon the shot, right? Because if you think about it, when we're doing an effect to something, we're working on log footage. We're not usually, especially on a TV show like SNL, we're not working on a final graded shot, which I think that's what you do in a more feature film process.
I think the general way I think it's preferred is VFX. I think you guys prefer working on the log, just kind of viewing it through a Rec 709 LUT, and then sending it to color afterwards, and then we put the grade on and do any kind of like tweaks or anything just to like match it if things are jumping out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of little lessons that I learned across the years. Is like, for instance, Photoshop will 100% burn you if you're working especially quickly in color, because you don't think about it, but that frame that you're taking out and painting out, you can't reapply color correction to that. You have to go and re-pull that frame, redo the Photoshop work on the colored frame, right? Like, you can't, if you're pulling it from a log image, then coloring it, then putting it in, I have to do that again when you give me a colored shot back. Yeah. So something we learned was always, or at least I always tried to do, is do your Photoshop work in After Effects, which sounds crazy, but trying to build anything you would build in Photoshop, build it in After Effects and build it progressively. So it's all based back to one clip. Because that's how you can do that when you put it in. But there were many times where something would come in and we'd be like, oh shit, like, we've done something crazy to this shot, and then color comes back and it won't match, and there's just no way you can match it. It's like, because we've done too much work, so you have to rebuild it, and then you have half an hour and there's no way you can do it. So yeah, I mean, is that the experience you always have? You always color a final render shot?
I mean, I've done it both ways. Like, we'll grade it, and then VFX will happen on top of the grade. It just kind of depends on the schedule, really. Yeah, it can happen both ways. And honestly, we don't really get say on it. Like, if there's enough time and they call us, so we can like kind of work through with the VFX artist what the best way, but sometimes just like schedule on how it goes down, it doesn't work. Personally, I don't think it really matters on the color side if it happens before or after. I think it's more for whatever the VFX artist is comfortable with and what's easier for them.
Have you ever gotten a composite shot that you couldn't make? They'd done work within there that once you pulled it into the log, started coloring it, it didn't match?
Yeah, not that it didn't match, because that's kind of easy to fix, but maybe more like the comp starts falling apart and like it doesn't hold up as well. Yeah. And then it's kind of, you flag it and then send it back to them and
say, hey guys, how did you build this? Like, you might need to look at the process. Yeah. So I mean, it's such a weird. It's like it is a wormhole, because I think everybody has a different opinion. But I've done shots for a film that totally exactly had that issue, and then months later I had to go back and try and remember how the hell I built something I did on an afternoon. You know what I mean? Way in advance. It's always VFX is such a thing, which is also crazy. What's crazy about SNL, that it continues to push and do more and more and more. They do more VFX every season. They do more shots. They do more, and it is just constantly a rising tide of team members, and
they always pull it off too.
That's the thing, it's never, the artists are just unbelievable. I mean, it's amazing to see what they can do, and how it just. I remember first season we ever had a VFX team, and that was when I moved to the VFX team from being an editor. We had a piece that played with Margot Robbie in Dress, and they wanted a little more effective ending. So they came up after Dress and said, hey, can we make all their heads explode in the last bit of this? And there are 4 people in it, and there's like, it airs after like an hour. Because also one of the most unique things about SNL that'll happen is, in Dress, you might be at the end of the show. So the show is usually about 2 hours of Dress. You might be doing a piece that's at the end of the show. It'll run in dress. They'll come up with notes, and it went really well. So now you're in the beginning of the show at 11:30. So your window of time to do revisions just changed from 2 hours to half an hour to 20 minutes even sometimes. And I think on that one we had less than 30 minutes, and we all think 3 of us each took a person's head, and we were all sitting next to each other just shouting how we were going to do the composite, because also VFX artists all work very differently, and we were all saying, I'm doing it like this. So we were all trying to do the same technique, and we all took one, and then the fourth person took them, melded that. I think that was actually me, took them and melded them all together and made sure they all matched, and then we made their head explode and then had to send it back to color.
That's insane. I think, was it you or I forgot who was telling me that it's kind of like with SNL VFX, it's almost like a magic trick of just finding what's the best way to trick the eye.
Yes.
The short amount of time you guys have.
Many times it's not the best effect that wins. You know what I mean? And that's not meant to be flippant. That's just, you can't get it rendered. Sometimes you can't, your machine literally, you can't have a shot that takes, an hour to render, because if they have any notes or something's messed up and you have to redo it, it's not going to make the show. So many times you have to find the way to do it the fastest way that is effective enough for the piece. And yeah. I mean, honestly, over the years that I did it, the guys just were so good. I mean, constantly blowing my mind with the things they would do, and you just learn so much just watching them. But back to color correction. So on that note, one thing that when I was color correcting stuff for TV or like a cable show or a web series or whatever, usually I'm going to set a look in a scene on a shot, and then I'll kind of copy and paste it and tweak it across and try and keep the angles the same. You work a little bit differently, I've noticed. You stack all the same angles right next to each other and then work them one by one.
You mean like grading all the shots of like you close up and then yeah. Well, first I'll go through and I'll set a look on like the scene on all the different shots. And then once we get that, like get it kind of locked in, then I'll kind of sort the footage on how it was shot and then apply the looks across that way, and then go back and play it down and just kind of balance and make sure there's nothing jarring cutting between.
And do you do the wides first typically or the close-ups?
The wides. Try and get like the establishing shot within the image. I wouldn't recommend ever starting on a close-up because you don't know the environment it's in and what's going on. So it's important to kind of lock down the environment, get that, and then go in and start doing the secondaries and close-ups and all that.
And I also notice whenever I've watched you color and how you can do, I think, things so quickly is the way I think about things is I think of kind of just almost like a primary grade where you're like setting the correction and the overall look, and then the secondaries, right, where you're going in and you're punching in specific colors, specific highlight or contrast regions you want to do. When I watch you do stuff, you kind of set that progressively across an image. So the highlights in this range are always affected like this. The shadows in this range are kind of always affected like this. So you can just plug a new shot in and it takes whatever correction node you've built.
Yeah, and it's important when you do that to try and not to do anything that's like too dodgy of a key. Like if I like keyed the reds and then tried to like darken them or something on a shot, that's probably not going to carry across on everything and start falling apart. So on like the primary base grade, it's kind of building the look in the simplest way possible.
Yeah, do you try
going in from there and then like adjusting and doing more like specific tweaks on a shot by shot basis?
I also noticed that you do something that I've never thought of doing, and something I really learned from you was you play with a lot of different LUTs at the same time. Not like you put on a LUT to test it, remove it, try and rebuild it.
Just kind of blending. Yeah, just getting a little flavor here, a little flavor there, and just kind of building out. I mean, but it's honestly, it's kind of the same as just building it through a curve too, and just doing like a little curve here and a little curve there, and kind of it's effectively the same thing. It's just, I guess, a quicker way of doing that. But yeah, just kind of doing a little sauce here and there.
Do you prefer, what's most important to you? This type of like sensor and color science in the footage or the resolution?
Sensor, for sure.
So meaning you'd take like HD 1080 Alexa over 6K something with like a 6 or 8K, camera,
Yeah, totally.
because you feel like you can get more out of that color science?
Yeah, I don't get more from resolution, but like, the color science within the sensor, it's just like, yeah, totally.
Have you ever approached a shot, or what do you do whenever somebody gives you a shot that is broken? Like there's a lot of seeping through color. It's got a total cast to it that they fucked up on set. And is there ways you can recover that?
It depends. I find that like film feels like the easiest to kind of recover and bring more color separation to. But obviously,
you mean like physical celluloid, like film?
Yeah, like shooting on 16 or 35. But I mean, there's a line too to everything. Like if you shoot everything cast in a red light and then all of a sudden want it to be neutral, it's probably not going to happen. I'm a big avid believer that it's just like, get it as close as you can on the shoot and don't rely on post for it, because it never looks as good as it's going to naturally look when you capture it correctly in the camera.
Right. So you don't lean totally on fix it on post.
Yeah.
Do it right and let us do our job.
Yeah. Color should be an enhancement, not a Band-Aid.
Absolutely. So talk about that, like getting it right on set. How does the relationship with the DP develop with you over time? And are there any situations where DPs come back to you to work continuously?
Yeah, totally. It's like, I mean, I think Colorist, it's all about just building relationships. I think that's what's kind of helped me through COVID is the majority of people I'm working with are people that I've built relationships with over the years. And because it's like, again, it's 50% work is 50% personality and getting along with the people and being on the same wavelength of like getting the image they want to go with.
So they use, like, I know Blake, who you might work with at SNL, he makes his own LUTs on set. How does that workflow work for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, he creates his own kind of looks and then brings it in, and then we just work on top of it. So sometimes it's as simple as just kind of balancing through it. And then maybe we try a little something with it, an experiment. But yeah, Blake McHale, like he'll have his vision in mind. And then my job is to just put those finishing touches on it for him and like kind of shape certain shots that he wants shaped and things like that.
Is that common? Like, do a lot of them send you, LUTs that they've built on set?
I wouldn't say so much that they built on set. And there are, I feel like a lot of DPs that just have LUTs that they like, one or two LUTs that they prefer to shoot through. And then they'll want that, but not too much on creating a brand new LUT on set, I would say. But
Gotcha.
Also it's like, it goes different ways too. It's like, also there's like with DPs too, it's like, we'll do tests with them and then like kind of create, like if they're shooting a feature or something, like create a LUT before that for like interiors and exterior scenes and day and night scenes. And then they end up shooting through that. And that's kind of becomes the base LUT. So you create a LUT based on some test footage that they then take to set? Yeah. And then the dailies are processed through that. So the grade's kind of already in that ballpark. And then it's kind of just enhancing that from there.
That sounds really smart. How is that often that teams think that far in advance, especially in the indie world?
Not really. It's more, I think it's definitely the bigger luxury sets of like films and episodic and thing where you actually have the time to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, I wonder if I guess what advice do you have working on, because you have a few films that went to Sundance this year, right? Right before everything closed down in COVID. So what is your advice for indie filmmakers that you've seen, like, doing their first film or, doing an early work or an indie work like that? Like, is there stuff that you think that anything you've experienced that could help them get more bang for their buck?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's kind of just going back to saying like making sure like you get as close to it as you can in camera, whatever you're trying to accomplish. And that doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be shot on the best camera or the best this. Is taking whatever you have and using that to your advantage and adapting it into the story and what the story needs. Like not every single piece, like with SNL shorts, like not every piece is shot on Alexa. Some are shot on like Panasonic cameras. I think it's always dependent on like what the piece is and what'll better it.
Right. What the story wants it to be. Is there any, do you think there's any use or any mileage that you could get from bringing a colorist or talking to your color process before you start shooting?
You could, if you have questions, yeah, but it kind of depends. I don't know if it's hard to be like, just reach out to someone randomly and be like, hey, like I'm making this short. Like I want to say it looks like I think it's more like a relationship that's built and then elevates to that level of trust with each other and kind of having that shorthand and knowing each other's style and things like that and talking things through. Because a lot of those, like, I only get really involved like early on if it's people that I've worked with before and have built that relationship with, and they know that they're coming to me to color afterwards and things like that. Because honestly, for the most part, it's like, I would say it's starting off, like color's probably the last thing on people's minds when they're just starting off making, like doing the pre-production production, and then think about like, oh crap, now we got to do color like while they're editing. So. Right.
Have you, so what do you want to do, Josh? Like, where are you going? You know what I mean? If you look like it yourself, 3 years from now, what do you want to be working on?
I'd say more features and episodic, just long form work in general, just things that have a longer meaning and impact, and they're just fun, and it's just fun to get and go, because also color's such like a ADD fast thing. Like you could do like 2 music videos a day, 3 commercials a day, so it's kind of nice to be lost in a film or an episodic series for a few weeks and really get involved in it, and
get to really dig in and be part of the process of the storytelling.
Yeah.
Is there a difference for you? Like, what is it like coloring a commercial versus like a feature film or TV show?
Well, commercials more, it's like you spend 7 hours really focused on a 30-second spot where it's just looping over and over and over again, and you're really digging in and dissecting the image. And I feel like when you're working on a commercial, a lot of the clients are looking at being like, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with this shot? What's wrong with this? Whereas with a film or episodic, it's more like, how do we make this better? Like, what's our overall arc, like vibe of this that we're going for? And then just fine tuning here or there. Whereas commercials, you're really carving into that image.
Are you, whenever you're doing a feature or an episodic, are you just analyzing it by scene? Like, I know the look has probably come from the DP, but you might have a scene that's super moody, super gritty, followed by out exterior morning. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah. You have you have your overall vibe, so nothing's too jarring unless it's supposed to be. But then, yeah, you definitely tackle it scene by scene, and depends. Usually you'll try and have like just kind of your base look throughout it, and then from there tweaking things and manipulating depending on how drastic a scene is supposed to vary from each other, but still having that overall kind of undertone of the same vibe.
Have you ever done anything where, like where the production design wanted to have like a blue, like have a very consistent color palette, and then it didn't kind of exist in a couple of scenes and you had to create it?
Not too much on long form work, I would say. Definitely, I'd say like in music videos and things, just because those are always so stylistic. And there was, for a while, they were shooting on like 4 different types of cameras, so wanting things to really kind of jump out and feel the differences on multiple formats and things like that.
Yeah. So if people wanted to check out your work, where should they come find you, Josh?
I finally updated my website after a couple of years of blankness, but joshbohoskey.com has some of my work on there. I'm on the Mills website. My reel's on there. Don't have anything on Instagram, so I have Instagram, but I don't post anything, so that's not.
So check out your website, or go to the Mill.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I always love talking to you, and this is a lot of fun. I'm glad we got to do it this time. Usually I prefer to do it over a beer or something, but this is always nice to do it with a recording.
I know, the new ways. Well, thanks for having me on.
Filmmaking is a collaborative experience, and so is this podcast. Please take a second to subscribe so you know about future episodes, and leave a review. It really does help us. For more info about today's guest, please visit independentfilmmakersguide.com, where you can check out all our episodes that run the gamut of filmmaking topics. They're available in both audio and video format.
IFG is created by Framework Productions. This episode was directed by James Allerdyce, produced and edited by Matt Mundy and Audrey Ray McHale, and hosted by Stephen Pierce. The music is by Glassboy. Find his music on freemusicarchive.org. See and listen to all the episodes, plus bonus content at independentfilmmakersguide.com. Thanks for listening.
Hey friends, we just wanted to take a quick moment to talk about two personal things. First, we wanted to thank you, our listening community, and our wonderful guests, learning so much together along the way and continuing to learn, sharing our stories, making a lot of new friends, and collaborating, which is exactly what this is all about. Which also brings me to my second point. In great part to many of these new relationships, we wanted to let you know that we've taken a lot of this advice ourselves and made our own narrative feature film, Herd, H-E-R-D, Herd, which is premiering this October on Friday the 13th in select theaters as well as on VOD. Personally, I think it's the perfect kind of scary movie to watch during our favorite scary season. So we'd love for you to celebrate with us and watch Herd. You can pre-order it on Apple TV, and of course, do the communal thing, see it in theaters. Of course, for all of this, please see our show notes, but basically, we're going to keep it all updated at herd.film. That's herd.film, herd.film as well. Thank you again, and be sure to give us a rating and a review over on Apple Podcasts so we can continue to build this community and collaborate. IFG, how movies get made.